and welcome to our latest edition of IRX Engage. I'm delighted to see you all. If you come back and you're joining us again, welcome back. And if this is your first time joining us, well, welcome to IRX Engage. Obviously, we can't run physical events at the moment, but this is where the IRX community is going to be hanging out over the next weeks and months. And this really is designed to do a few things. We're going to showcase and bring you some of the content that we were due to have at our event back in April. Obviously, we've also got some content because goodness me, haven't times changed? So we're bringing a whole load of content which are helping everybody navigate the current circumstances. And this is also a great chance to connect as well. So the neat little platform we have, it gives you the chance, depending on your registration, to search for people to connect and also to take part in discussions. So it's fantastic that you've come along and you've joined us today. And today we're going to be looking at driving traffic, nailing conversion, because with this explosion in e-commerce or this huge increase in traffic that we've seen, how do we make sure that what we're really doing is driving traffic that converts into sales? So how are we driving that ROI, and how are we making sure that we're creating loyal customers that will carry on into the future? So we've got a great lineup to talk about that. I'm just going to talk for a couple of minutes more and just talk about a couple more housekeeping things. But before I do that, there is one important thing to do. And that is, if you're watching this live and not on a pre-record, then my suggestion is that you hit the watch live button. So it should just be here up in the menu bar above. You can see the words watch live, or if you can't find it there, just go to the home page and press watch live, and that will just mean that you naturally go from one session to the rest without a break, without you having to automatically click onto the next session yourself. So if you haven't already done that, I suggest you do go and do it now. I am by far and away the least interesting thing that's going to happen this afternoon. So whilst I'm talking, you can dip out very quickly, hit the watch live button, and come back in time for the really interesting stuff, which is about to start in just a couple of moments. So I alluded to a couple of things then. So what else can you do? As I said, depending on your registration, then you can look through the attendees list. Again, look up there in the menus button. You can search through for attendees. You can find people that you want to connect with, and you can send them a connection request. In some cases, it might not be immediate. We've had just under 1,000 people now onto the platform, and people are coming back all the time. People are watching some of this on demand. So if you do send a connection request and the person doesn't connect with you straight away, then keep checking back because they may connect with you at a later time. You can also find suppliers. So we've got a great bunch of suppliers who are there supporting IRX. Do have a look through, and again, you can send requests to them. Again, if they don't come back to you immediately, they will receive a request at some point. So do have a look through because there are some fantastic solutions and exactly the kind of thing that we need to get us through these periods as we're seeing such an increase in e-commerce. And then we've got the chats as well. So there is a chat running alongside the content here. Um, Go ahead and post your questions. Put the questions that you want to see answers to. Um, and then also following the live session today, we're going to have discussions. So again, up there in the menu bar at 3 o'clock, we'll be heading over to the chat rooms under discussions where you can post your own comments and questions. And then just a note on the questions. Any questions you've got for Nicola, we're going to have two sessions today. We're going to have Nicola Fox speaking, who I'll introduce in just a minute. If you want to put questions to her, please go ahead, and then they will be answered as part of the panel. We've got a slightly different setup to the one we're advertising before. Unfortunately, Yulia's not been able to give a presentation, but we're very lucky that she is going to be there on the panel session. So everybody will be here. So put your questions there, and we will do all questions and all comments as part of the panel session. Finally, just if you haven't already done it, just do make sure that you are watching this by having pressed the watch live button, just so that you don't miss anything in the transition from the presentation through to the panel session later on today. So, right, that's enough of me waffling. The uninteresting stuff is over, and now it's time to crack on with the really good content. And our first session is looking at behavior channels and data to enable more targeted, personalized marketing. I'm delighted to welcome Nicola Fox, who is now running her own business called Fine Tooth Comb. I'm just going to pause momentarily because that is such a good name for a company. Um, I think it's worth echoing again. But Nicola has been working in retail, customer marketing and loyalty for over a decade. Until very recently, she was head of CRM at Misguided, and before that, head of digital marketing at Holland and Barrett. And she received rave reviews from her presentation last year at IRX at the NEC in Birmingham. So we're delighted that she's come back to talk to us today. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to you, Nicola.
Bring me back. And yeah, I'm just going to share a few thoughts really, based on my own experiences in loyalty marketing and what I believe are kind of the key areas that retail should be focused on to nurture loyalty. And that's at all times, but particularly given the hit to retail that's occurred during the pandemic. And so for me, the whole conversation on loyalty has to start with a kind of really frank discussion about what loyalty is, and most importantly, what loyalty is not. Because for so many years, I worked on that basis that it was about keeping your customers shopping, so all about retention. But as I developed my experience and I ran more loyalty programs and I ran more loyalty initiatives, and my understanding of that deepened, I really realised that it's so less to do with orders and much more to do with consideration and ultimately love. And so, whilst we're right to look at order rates and conversion rates and repeat purchase, because those are the things that bring the money in, we do need to be looking at more rounded metrics that indicate whether our brands are being chosen within our market, whether we stand up against our competitors and stand out against our competitors, and the degree to which we're being referred and recommended by others and by the customers that shop with us, because of the experience that we give to them. So loyalty has really become, in my mind, a state of mind. And it has to be that state of mind and that mindset within your business, so that your teams are all solving for your customer needs to improve that experience and kind of create that relationship with them that's absolutely rock solid. And I mean, loyalty is a word that can sometimes conjure up lots of different images in people's minds. And I think the most common one is that of a plastic card, because even like very recently, in some situations, people kind of have a bit of an aversion to the idea of loyalty because they just don't want to put plastic cards in people's wallets. But actually, I just think it's become, far much more than a plastic card and some points, and can actually be far more elegant and discreet now. But in addition, we don't need to overcomplicate this. Customers can fall in love with the most simple of brands because of the value that they add to their life. So it doesn't need to be high tech or high reward. It doesn't need to have a massive bill attached to it. It simply needs to be about you using your capabilities to great effect and be absolutely rooted in what you know about your customers' needs and why they choose you. Move on. So the best starting position is that of looking at the behaviours and habits of your current customer set. All of what you do should be based around what you know about your customer, how they behave when they interact with your brand, and how you want to influence that behaviour. Um, but to nurture loyalty is really to also understand the difference between behaviours and habits. Because in my view, habits are the things that as humans we develop out of maybe necessity or joy. They may be things that we're aware of doing, or they may be things that we're unconscious of doing. Whereas behaviours are much more about the reactions that we have to our environment. So clearly, to nurture loyalty and to nurture those relationships with our customers, we need to influence both. The habits are the things like the repeat visits, the sessions, the orders, but we also need to impact and influence the behaviours. So how they interact with us when they are on our site and when they experience our brand. And I think this is important because when we design campaigns to nurture loyalty, they have to satisfy these. It's not enough to simply incentivize the hell out of your customers and hope that they just keep placing repeat orders. Because if you're not influencing the behavior campaigns, without really understanding why your customers are abandoning those bags, actually changing any behavior at all. You're simply just, training them to behave in a certain way. So, and this is what I mean about outsmarting the old metrics. I'm not here to say that the metrics that we used to use to measure retention, to measure engagement are wrong. What I'm saying is that they are changing and we have to innovate with them, because actually people are learning what those metrics are and they're learning how to play the game. And so, as CRM specialists, as marketing specialists, we have to be prepared to innovate around what those metrics are, how we use them in our campaigns, and use the data and the understanding that we've got about why people behave in a certain way to influence them and make them better. And of course, this doesn't just apply to what you do and what you say. It also applies to where you say it. And this is why I talk about channel tug of war, because so many businesses are structured in a way where you will find that you're competing over the same conversion opportunity. So more than ever, it's important customer that you understand them, and you understand them by showing up in the channels they're active in, rather than the one that you think you can execute the campaign in. So even if your e-com team doesn't like pop-ups on the site, if that's where your customer is, you owe it to that customer to be there and to show them what you've got to say in that channel. And finally, by improving relevancy and personalization, whatever you are doing, remember that you're talking to people, and people, not sessions. They are personalities. They're not just simply visitors to your site. They're going to have quirks, they're going to have likes and dislikes, a sense of humor. They're going to have things that make them happy, and they're going to have things that cause them pain and frustrate them. So you need to use that to strengthen your campaigns. But before you start all of that, what you really need to do is look at your capabilities and what that can allow you to do. Because within personalization, it's not enough now to simply include a name or make a relevant comment that affects 99% of the population. Things like relentlessly following people around with retargeting on stuff that they've looked at but haven't purchased will just make them uneasy and distract them rather than necessarily drive them back to shop. And if you've got campaigns in place that are reminding people that it's 12 months since they shopped, then really, unless you're in healthcare or there's a health or a financial benefit for the customer, it's really not adding value. So don't get me wrong, personalization doesn't have to be high tech and out of your cost benchmark, but it does need to add value. So really dig deep on what that would be for your brand and for your customers. Your aim really in all of this is to make your brand so much a part of your customers' lives that they rely on you and they look to you to guide them, to share ideas with them, to remind them about important things, and to direct them in their making their sales and their selections. So identify those pain points that your customer has and start to put your data and insight into action so that your brand can come alive and make that experience more pleasurable for them. Okay, so starting on this process of change can be really daunting, and I do realize that because I've been in roles where that's been the case. And I think I would say that you either end up being, as teams, you end up being either kind of paralyzed by the overwhelming amount of stuff that you feel you need to do, or the other end of the scale where you kind of start ripping everything up and changing everything all at once, and you don't actually know what's making a difference. What I've found over the time that I was working in these areas is that rather than trying to get very specific about what you're going to do and get into absolute minute detail about what it is, start to try and kind of create or visualize a direction for how you want your data to work within your business and how you want to move towards that, in terms of your business. You need to think about things like, what role does data play in terms of your brand, in terms of your day-to-day decision making, in terms of the marketing and the trading and the buying that you do, and how do you want that to be? How do you want that to change the destiny of your brand and the experience of your customers? And it's so important to have that approach right, because first of all, you owe it to your existing customer base, but also, and particularly now, for new acquisitions, That onboarding process for new acquisitions has always been important. But those acquisitions made during lockdown are particularly unique because they've been made in circumstances where it's been quite distressed. So maybe they've been, very stressed in making that purchase, or maybe they've been panic buying. Maybe they've had to buy something for the first time that they've never bought before, or because they've been put in a situation where they've had to try a brand or try a particular channel for the first time and they've never done it. So those newly acquired customers, are going to need a little bit of special treatment. And also you might find that they don't fit the customer profile that you think you have for your brand. So having that direction, having that understanding of how you're going to use that data to inform you is really important. So that you get it right for those new customers, but so that you don't undermine what you already do for your existing ones. And the likelihood is that for a while you may need to treat those groups separately. You may need to have different approaches, different strategies for them. But just make sure that you do, and you give them the attention, and you recognise them for who they are and where they are in terms of your brand awareness, and where they are in terms of understanding what your customer journey looks like. The good thing, the massive opportunity, I think, for retail, particularly given the hit that it's taken, is that this kind of approach, this opportunity, plays so much into the hands of that kind of strategic loyalty pillar of trust. It's the most perfect opportunity for you to really demonstrate as a brand that you understand your customers, you understand their needs, and you're prepared to kind of lay bare on what you need as a brand, what you need, your expectations are, and the changes that you've put in place to make life easier for your customers. Think about things like fulfillment, for example. We're sometimes quite focused on the first part of that customer journey up to the place where they place their order. But for new customers, fulfillment is massive because they've placed an order with you because they had to. They couldn't find anybody else, or they couldn't find the product anywhere else, or they just needed it immediately. So placing the order is less concerning for them, and it's actually more about the experience that they have in terms of, the delivery arriving on time, the delivery arriving in full, being kept up to date on when the delivery will be made, what it's like to, if the order isn't quite right, or they need to exchange it or refund, what's that process like? How are they made to feel having placed an order? And what are the incentives around placing future orders and staying around with you? So all those things are really important. I'm not saying they're easy, they're a challenge, but they are a huge opportunity right now for you to repair some of that damage. And so the final slide I'm going to take you through today is really around what I do within my business now, given my experience in retail for the last 20 years. And it's focusing really on what you need to do as a business culturally to be able to execute on your loyalty strategy. Because the changes needed within businesses who are really serious about nurturing loyalty are far reaching. Implementing what's needed will involve changing up lots of things, and sometimes dispelling myths that have been held really strong in businesses for years. So it's not going to be plain sailing. And the best way I heard this put was that revolutions are messy and people get left behind. And so businesses need to be ready culturally to support those teams who are affected, emotionally, practically, structurally, so that you can get the best result from them. But they also need to be prepared to do what it takes to get that loyalty in place. So what does it take? Well, I believe that campaigns and approaches to nurture loyalty have to be about that sweet combination of sentiment and action. And furthermore, it needs to be evident. You need to show your customer what you're doing all the way through that customer journey. Demonstrating empathy, really showing that your customer, that you get them, that you're trying to make things easier for them, you're trying to make the experience pleasant, is instrumental in building that unconditional selection of you as their brand of choice, and that pillar of trust that I mentioned earlier. But this does need to be coupled with action. If you're not really ready as a business to put into action what you're promising, you need to look at kind of scaling down your promises so that you can actually meet that. I then turn to kind of things like incentives. You know, I mentioned incentives earlier are abandoned basket, and I think, you know, I come from businesses which were, you know, high promoters, you know, fast fashion, healthcare, where promotions were the lifeblood of the business. So I'm not saying that all the incentives need to be taken away, but I think they do need to be used in quite an informed way. And it kind of plays to that sentiment and action really, because if you decide that actually you're going to like really dial up on the incentives, the risk is that you take away all of that engagement and that connection with your customer. But if you do it the opposite way and you take away all of those incentives and just play up on the sentiments of your brand, you know, if you do that too quickly, your performance can suffer. So it's, you know, incentives are a perfect illustration of how you can balance those two things. And then the other area I would suggest to look, and I really like this area because it's not about marketing and it's not about buying and it's not about trading. It's about the whole business. And it's what I call kind of reasonable procedures. So those procedures in your business where you know that you can make change and improvement, and it will actually have a direct impact on how you make your customers feel about you. So things like, you know, return windows, particularly, um, excessive delivery charges, enabling returns, not making them something that people are frightened of doing, but also removing some of those barriers to entry by giving them kind of a few months of free delivery so that they can experience you as a brand. All in all, making the kind of the end-to-end thing more pleasurable and less stressful. In everything that you do, as I mentioned earlier, demonstrate relevance. So not just in terms of incentives, but everything that you do. Your brand will be much more highly valued and much more highly regarded if every time you communicate with your customer, you show them what you know about them and you show them how much you understand where they're coming from. Being being loyalty focused takes what it takes, and I'm really sorry because there isn't a loyalty blueprint that we can roll out and it will work in every business. It's going to differ depending on your level of maturity, the sector that you're in, because it has to be based on what you know about your customer, how they feel about you, and what you stand for as a brand. There isn't one single campaign or single piece of technology or a single change that you can make to your segmentations or anything like that that will change and improve loyalty overnight. It's really a sum of parts over a longer period of time. And what is needed will impact virtually every area of your business, and every area of your customer journey. So you really need all of your teams and the whole of your business focused on it, which is why I talk to teams a lot about the importance of getting your, you know, your directors and your C-suite involved. You know, if you can explain and you can demonstrate to those people the importance and the value that loyalty can bring to your business, get it on their agenda, talk to them about it all the time, then all of a sudden those conversations change and everybody, all of the momentum within the business starts to focus and move in that direction that I mentioned earlier. Because in the end, the changes that you implement to use data in whatever way it is within your business, but particularly to nurture loyalty, will be structural. You know, it might end up meaning that you kind of completely restructure teams within your organization. There'll be procedural changes, the way that you make decisions, the way that you operate, the way that you know, you run certain areas of your business. There'll be financial implications, some of them positive, but some of them will be costly to begin with. And strategic changes as well, you know, having those discussions with teams about not, you know, measuring ourselves channel by channel, but actually measuring ourselves on lifetime value. So to make it happen, you'll need the entire business focused on it, not simply just a refresh of your retention strategy. But that's exactly the cultural shift you need, exactly the changes that you need to be talking about within your business so that you get on that directional path of using your data to nurture loyalty.